The Immortal Empires, a culmination of 3 video games worth of content into one super map that spans the entirety of the Warhammer globe. This is an unprecedented feat of technology and nerddom, which results in the nirvana of Warhammer Fantasy. Want to play a world where the High Elves ruled Cathay? Easily done. How about a campaign where lizardmen sit on the throne of Altdorf? Say no more, friendo. Put Mazda on that throne. Immortal Empires is set to release in a few weeks, and it brings such an amazing wealth of ways to play a game that we've already been playing for years. On top of it, we can play existing characters to much more fun ends with brand new starting locations as well as optimization of their existing mechanics. In this video, I want to talk about just that. We're going to discuss how some of these new starting locations will result in a playthrough that is by and far much different than ways we've been able to play these lores before. I'll be using the techno wizardry of Photoshop to show all of this, so excuse the low-tech work, but I felt it was the easiest way to explain what I wanted to talk about while also feeling like a Warhammer John Madden. I'll be dividing the chapters up according to the characters I want to talk about, so you can jump ahead to any character you want to listen to, most by using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. But let's get started on here on Immortal Empires, Changing Warhammer 3. And here we have the map, and our first person to talk about is Lokhir Felheart. And now this map has been updated with the new placement of Vilitch. This video will of course become outdated the second we get the placement of whatever the final character is for Khorne. But if we look on the map, and I can go ahead and press this button, we can see where we have our starting location right there for Lokhir. That puts us at a pretty cool location, right? We have a whole bunch of different ways to navigate across this globe, and we can jump into any of the locations down over here, to jump over onto the left side of the map to go retake Karak. That is a really cool option that you can take advantage of, and I think that's going to be really fun. But by and large, what we really get with Lokhir Felheart is the ability to play in a location that we've never had Dark Elves. Now, to be fair, we've never had any race other than Cathay really in these locations and the demons, so that kind of is a misnomer. But my point still stands, that as Lokhir Felheart, I can go and take over Cathay and make this new Dark Elf Empire in the lands of Cathay. You now have the Eastern Steppes and a whole bunch of ways to kind of push your way north into this area, into Kadatha, and have this huge titanic battle with plenty of the Warriors of Chaos and the Demons of Chaos thus of. So you have these fun new ways to take advantage of this. You could even, well, you can't really go into End because that's not really there yet, I guess, quote unquote. We don't really know if it's coming, but hopefully it does. But we still have a very cool lore location for him to even be over here, right? We already know that the Kraken Lord is always ranging about the countryside, pillaging and toppling statues and making swords out of them. But still, nonetheless, you have a lot of really cool, fun ways to play. You can jump into these sea lanes, which are over there, which will bring you back over to a land you've already kind of spelunked through with Lokhir, right? Or you can really kind of focus more so on reclaiming the Dark Elf lands for yourself, and like I said, retaking Karak and retaking that from Elithanar, which I think makes for this to be a very different and fun playthrough, especially with the way the new slave mechanic works and how that's possibly going to push out for Lokhir. You're looking at such a better way to play this guy that I think is going to be very fun and very exciting for Dark Elf players. Moving on to the opposite end of the spectrum from the Dark Elves to the High Elves, we have Teclis' new starting location down here in the Jungle of the Gods. And that's pretty tantalizing, right? We have got him now in a whole different continent where he can do a lot of really cool things. Because over in these locations, we have well, we can't go right here, but these are locations pretty much of the Elven colonies, which allows for Teclis to be poised at a location to take all of these colonies back. You can make the argument too that Emmerich can really benefit from these too, but I think Emmerich is going to have way more fun ranging out in these directions. Put a little boom, ba bam, ba bam. Look at that. What the hell kind of arrow is that? But I think that's very fun, and he has a lot of really cool options for alliances, right? He can ally with the dwarfs, he can ally here with the Tomb Kings if he so wishes, but he's got Empire right here, he's got Lizardmen right here, so a lot of really fun ways for, and also Aetherian, right? It's not that far away from him. Even Emmerich is really not that far away either to try and get everything kind of solidified. So you have this fun playthrough that's way different than starting on Ulthuan. You could go and push back into Ulthuan after capturing a bunch of these. And that's a kind of a fun concept, right? If we think of the, here, I'll change this to like a lighter blue. If we think of kind of the lands of the High Elves, it encompassed Ulthuan. It had pretty much this region right here. Maybe not exactly that, but you pretty much had the Force of Shalon and the region that the Wood Elves start in. And all these kind of regions kind of dotted the coast. You had this land that was very kind of wide and spanning, right? Even the old High Elf territories actually kind of were over here in Altdorf and in what's that place called? Marienburg, which had like the name was like Sith. So you had a bunch of really cool places. So with Teclis, you could recreate this Ulthuani empire where you are taking back the old colonies and then trying to force a confederation into either Tyrion or Alarielle or both, whoever's remaining in Ulthuan, to kind of bring everything under Teclis's banner. And I think that's a really cool, different way to play a High Elf character, especially one that is poised so far south into the Southlands, right up against Kairos Fateweaver. Now, pivoting away from elves, let's talk about some demons. Well, mainly, I guess, warriors of chaos, because if we look at Be'lakor over here at Albion, we have a pretty wild character with a wild card level of starting locations as far as where he can expand to. And this is what I think makes Immortal Empires so fun, is we have a huge amount of locations to go to. You can start right here, and then you can kind of rummage through this land and convert all these people into demon princes. You can go over here into the old world. You can go over here into Norska. You could even kind of scale through the top over here into Northern Chaos Wastes, or you jump into a sea lane, then jump across the map and go into Cathay if you so wish. It takes you much longer to get into that location, but you at least have two individuals that are humans that you can convert into demon princes. So having this ability to kind of corrupt people and turn them into demon princes and kind of grow your land empire is, I think, really cool, and it's very unique for Be'lakor, which I really, really, really like. And it really creates this very kind of aimless campaign, in the sense that aimless is maybe not the word, because that's usually a negative connotation, but a build your own adventure in a cool way, in the sense that you can really go wherever the hell you want to create this campaign in the way that you want, which I think is really cool for Be'lakor, and it's pretty fitting, right? He doesn't necessarily have a set narrative he has to follow unless he's stuck into his a curse, right, of always bringing the next Everchosen to all the artifacts to become the next Everchosen. Always in those times in history in between, we see him just kind of pulling the strings and machinations to try to get back at the dark gods. So this could be your way, like, oh, I'm going to go and convert all the lands of the old world to demon princes, screw the dark gods, I'm going to go that route. So you have a bunch of different things that you can do with Be'lakor, and I think that makes him a very exciting, especially the fact that he's now a set legendary lord with set mechanics that's also going to make him benefiting, or allow him to benefit from all the new Warriors of Chaos stuff that's coming with that revamp. Now, another character that's benefiting from a brand new starting location is Grombrindal, the White Dwarf himself. And he starts right up against Malekith. And he's trying to exact that revenge, right? As far as his story, Grombrindal is seen to be the character, Snorri Whitebeard, I think it's his name, that on his deathbed had Malekith promise that dwarf and elf would always be friends. Malekith, being Malekith, was like, yeah, sure, buddy, no big deal. And then double-crossed and caused all the sort of things like the Elf Civil War and then the War of Beards. So, fuck him. But from here, we have a really awesome starting location for the dwarves. A very unique one, because they are now all the way up here in Nagaroth. Now, this places them in a pretty crazy location, because they're going to be fighting against a lot of Dark Elves right there. They also have some Warriors of Chaos over this location. Be'lakor, if he so wishes, he's going to have, Grombrindal can ally with both the Wood Elves and maybe the Dark Elf, or High Elf, whoops, High Elves if he wants to try to, and the Tomb Kings if he wants to try to. But I think that this, as far as a starting location, is really sick. Taking the Nagaroth for the Dawi, that is pretty wild. And then getting a alliance here with Katep is really cool, because if we kind of think about this, we always see dwarfs in that region that they're always in, right, as far as around the Karazhan core. And in the Vortex campaign, we were able to play the Spine of Sotek with Thorek. And Now we have Thora kind of in that Southlands area that he was taking advantage of. But this is a vastly different starting location. And wherever we get this Khorne starting Legendary Lord, and my I guess assumption is that he'll probably be maybe somewhere in Nagaroth. He or she will be somewhere in Nagaroth. If it's Valkyrie, if it's Angrim, who knows. But that could be a pretty wild direct opposition against Grombrindals that could make this starting location extremely fun, and one I think that the Dawi really need to spice up their campaign in a really cool way. Even though this one was just released today, I think that Vilitch is going to be a really fun playthrough. He's over here at the Red Fortress, Red whatever the hell, in the Eastern Steppes, and it's going to be pretty wild because now we get the Warriors of Chaos actually in the heart of Cathay. Well, not the heart of Cathay, but he's close enough to Cathay that it's going to be a direct challenge into it in a different way than Kolek Suneater over here, right? And man, Kolek and Grimgor are right up against each other. But Vilitch, I think, and mark my words, Vilitch is going to be probably one of the most fun playthroughs for the entirety of Immortal Empires, because as Cathay fills with more legendary lords, and then as the Chaos Dwarfs come into this game and we get more Ogre Kingdoms, this whole area I think is going to become pretty wild. And Vilitch I think is going to be a very fun character because as he benefits from vassals and all these other things with being able to teleport everywhere, right? Because he has teleport stance as a reduction in cost. I think that this character can be really, really, really fun to jump around and play all those new Warriors of Chaos with their brand new conventions, their brand new mechanics, their cults and everything like that in a land that's going to be really rife with a lot of legendary lords come probably a year from now, a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, however it kind of fleshes out. I think that this will always be a very fun and very different playthrough, not just for Warriors of Chaos, but by and large for the game itself. Next up, we have Alberich, and this is an interesting location, right? He's pushed off from the coast of Bretonnia, and now he's in the Piranha Swamps, and he can start some Bretonian colonies of his own. He has an immediate ally to his northwest over here, and I think that this character is going to thrive in this location. If you think about it, there's going to be a lot of the Vampire Coast, which in the beginning portions of the game, I think he won't struggle with Lothar Harkon because he'll be able to do a lot of cav charges against the entry-level coast armies that'll really kind of help out. He also has a potential ally in the Lizardmen, depending on how things go. But you've got Greenskins over here. You've got plenty of other ways for Alberich to thrive in this location. Lustria, by and large, has changed in Immortal Empires. It is no longer the cramped location of a million starting locations, right? Like Volcanic Islands had, oh wait, no, maybe it was that in Vortex, or is that in Mortal Empires where we had Scryer there? I think that was in Vortex. That was in Vortex, yeah, because Mortal Empires is where they are over in the Pillars and 13, whatever the fuck. But still, my point remains that in Immortal Empires, this land was just rife with tons of characters. You had Teclis over here. You had so much stuff going on. So now things have been kind of cleared away. There's more room to breathe. And I think with that too, you've got the sea lanes to take advantage of. You could have Alberich have this kind of Outremer empire by spanning over here, jumping into a sea lane, swinging all the way over to Cathay, and starting to just rabble-rouse around here. It would probably be very hard for him, but he could just simply take it over the lands of Lokhir. He could fight into Vilitch. He could fight down here into Nakai if he so wishes, who's next up on our list. And he could fight into Skaven and then ally with Cathay. So Alberich doesn't need to be bound to Bretonnia in the same way he's been in the past. He has so much more freedom now to have this errantry war of his own to anywhere else on the map, which I think is very fun and very exciting for Bretonnia. So with Nakai, one thing I really like is the ability to just kind of jump back and play where Immortal Empires, he started on Albion, right? But you can just use the sea lane and jump back and go into Lustria and take over Lustria as Nakai. That's pretty sweet. But, and you kind of unite that land, right? You can kind of jump over there. Me and Gorak gonna go have ourselves a little land where it's easier to unite, right? It's not as packed, just like we were talking about earlier. He can land over here in Jungle of Mist and just kind of take over this land and meet up with his bro, Gore the Rock Johnson. But alternatively, until we get the DLCs, I'm assuming that we're getting DLCs, of Cathay, he has pretty much carte blanche on all of this region to just kind of expand as he wants. Of course, yeah, he's going to run into Cathayan characters and he's going to run into Skaven, but by and large, the opposition here is not going to be huge, that he can get 4 provinces without probably hitting any legendary lords, which allows him a rampant amount of growth. And remember, of course, that he does have the whole like secondary faction thing that he has to deal with, but still, that's a lot less management, and his ability to expand because of that, I think, is what makes Nakai a pretty scary person to start at the southern portion of Cathay. I bet you by the time we get more Cathayan lords, they'll move Nakai again, and he'll kind of be a kind of moving character as other characters flesh out this map. Mark my words again. But I think, again, Nakai is a real great way to get Lizardmen out of Lustria and the Southlands in different portions of the map. Now, for a character that really hasn't moved, one I think kind of benefits from renewed sense of worth is Arkhan. Arkhan the Black down over here in the Land of Assassins has a new ally right there in Mannfred von Carstein, which is great. And on top of it, it's going to be a matter of trying to manage a lot of the enemies around Arkhan. And I really want to see something in the future that brings him to Nagashazar, right? Something that kind of pushes him in that direction to really try to unite something with Nagash, or maybe in the same way that Boris Ursus isn't on the map unless you play as Boris Ursus. Maybe if they did something with Nagash, he's not on the map until you do something with Arkhan to bring him onto the map, to create the Undead Legion. And I really want that to be kind of a focal point for Arkhan. And I think in this setup, it makes sense because, okay, he's got to push his way across these lands, deal with Skarbrand in some way, shape, or form, make an alliance with Mannfred von Carstein, find some artifacts, renew or revive Nagash, and bingo, bango, bungo, you're done. Which puts a very, we're going to talk about him in 2 characters from now, but Volkmar, it puts him in a pretty precarious situation because Volkmar is part of the resurrection for Nagash. He's like, his physical body is the vessel in which Nagash then inhabits and explodes out of and kills him, obviously. But I think that all this could kind of play together in a somehow distant Nagash DLC, where it says, okay, your objectives are ally with Mannfred von Carstein, which becomes part of that ritual as well. Get these 4 or 5 artifacts, go and kill this character, do this, do that, and then you can start this ritual and create the Undead Legion or something like that. I would love to see some sort of long-form quest for him in that scope. We're switching colors for this next one because Grimgor has got an unbridled growth potential. Sure, he's got to contend him with Kolek, which we talked about a little bit ago, but really, outside of that, the southern portions of this, until we get any kind of Chaos Dwarfs, is just green. Like, that is all gonna be eaten up by Grimgor. He even has the potential to go north, really, and eat up this as well. Like, I think that because there's not enough legendary lords placed into these regions just yet, this whole region is for Grimgor is just going to be this massive green empire. And I think for a lot of players that might seem very boring. But think of it this way. If you expand to these locations, you then have an amazing potential to confederate with Skarsnik or anyone else, really, for that matter. Any other greenskin you come across is my point. And then you can expand east or west, whatever direction. You can have this whole cool, badass Grimgor Cathayan empire where he is sitting upon the throne, the imperial throne. Like, you can do so many fun things with him because there's not a lot of things to stop him right now. And he's got some quick alliances over here, right, like we've talked about. And there's plenty of NPC factions that are greenskin down in this area. Here, let me do this. That are down in this area. So I think that Grimgor right now is another one of those characters that will change drastically across the years as more characters fill the locations around him. But until then, he has carte blanche to do as he pleases and create whatever green empire he so wants. Next up is the facial hair master of the empire himself, Volkmar. Now, down here in the land of dervishes, it's going to be a pretty wild fight for him, right? He is surrounded by undead. He's got demons to the south, demons to the northeast, beastmen to the northeast, undead to the west, undead to the east. They're all over the place. And he also has plenty of potential allies in, well, maybe not the Tomb Kings, but he has them in the Dwarfs, he has them in the High Elves, he has them potentially in the Lizardmen. So he has a lot of ways, and even Bretonnia right there, a lot of ways to have a lot of fun here. And with his objectives, right? With his objectives to claim the Books of Nagash, that then puts him in a very precarious position or timeline as to when he returns to the old world, when he goes and squares off maybe against Festus at the Brass Keep right here, or when he can go and just kind of throw fisticuffs to any of the chaos elements that are up over here in Norscore, the Northern Chaos Wastes. I think that Volkmar having this starting location in the Southlands is going to be pretty wild because he's got such a huge amount of contention around him, a lot of allies and a lot of enemies. But I think most importantly is how you can kind of role play this character to be this kind of avenging hero who comes from the Southlands with a way to fight against chaos, a way to fight against the undead, and brings the Books of Nagash back into the Heartland, into the old world Heartlands, or Heartland of the old world, Altdorf, Jesus Christ, and fights against the coming tide of destruction. And I think that that's a really fun and interesting play style for Volkmar, whereas before, yeah, he was just he was down here and he dealt with all the other things you had to deal with, you know, like, actually no, he was kind of a little bit differently, but still, nonetheless, he was not as fun before. And I think now you have so much. I inadvertently draw a boob with a flag on it, looks like it, but either way, I think it's a really cool way to kind of play Volkmar the Grim in Immortal Empires. Moving into a bit of a threesome, we have Queek, Belegar, and Skarsnik. Now, by and large, Queek's starting location hasn't changed too much. It's just a little bit further north, right? But if we're talking about a lore or literal objective, right? A lore objective for Queek would be 8 Peaks. A literal objective for these two would be Karak 8 Peaks. And if we have this objective for these characters, it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate getting to them now. In the past, you know, they were a little bit more on top of each other, right? We had Skarsnik over here in the Southern Grey Mountains, right next to the vault, where we had Belegar trying to both of them make a mad dash for the 8 Peaks. Now, they are both pretty close to 8 Peaks, a little bit further down south into the vaults, and he's over here in Rib Peaks. And it kind of results in a faster dash. And do we know if they even have that as part of their objectives is a Karak 8 Peaks? But either way, going at it from a lore perspective of these 3 characters fighting for this location, I think brings a lot of really rich and fun gameplay avenues for you, the player. And that's something that I think you might have caught the theme of what I'm trying to talk about with so many of these characters now, is the options or the ways that you can play these characters in such a fun, different way that kind of fits with a lore objective they've had in the past, or a lore story that they're trying to push into, or something of the sort where you feel like there's more of an objective in your playthroughs in Immortal Empires than you've had in Mortal Empires, which just kind of felt like paint the map closest to me, zippity-doo-dah, bye-bye. You now actually have the whole world that these characters have been in and out of throughout all of their many stories, their history, their backstory, their Black Library books, whatever it is. And so you have this new race here to the 8 Peaks, which I think is going to be very fun for any one of these characters if you want to take those routes. Another threesome to talk about, which is kind of a weird statement because there's a father-daughter situation going on here, are the Kislev characters with Katerin Koseltian and Boris. Now, I don't know if CA has said whether or not Boris is on the map if you don't play him like he is in the Chaos Realms campaign, but I'm going to assume he is for the sake of this video. So there's a lot of really interesting ways you can kind of look at this, right? You've got the 3 major cities of Kislev, and the Cursed City doesn't have anyone inhabiting it, so that's one that's got to be taken. But playing as any one of these characters, you have to kind of make the decision on how you're going to play Kislev. Are you just going to turtle up in Kislev and just kind of stem the tide against everything that's coming against you? Are you going to expand outward, maybe eastward over here and fight against Grimgor? Are you going to try to hold up with different alliances? Because if you kind of think about it, you are very isolated from people that would want to ally with you. Maybe the Wood Elves, but probably not. You have this portion of the dark, that's not a dark elf, that's a dwarf. but that's a grudging for anyone who's a dwarf fan. But the closest ally to you is going to be like Nordland, you know, Midland, Talabecland, that are NPCs, and Ostland right there, of course, but Ostermark, I guess, as well. But I mean, as far as other legendary lord characters that you can jump into and be friends with, you're jumping all the way over here. That's your closest one outside of it. Of course, all these guys, like the Eastern Oblast, Troll Country, those are going to be NPC Kislev factions that you'll have to deal with in some way, shape, or form. So I think that Kislev was already a very challenging and different playthrough in Chaos Realms. I think Immortal Empires is going to be even more unforgiving, and that's apropos to Kislev. You are supposed to be the kind of northern bastion against chaos, and that's how Kislev has always seen themselves, and they've always looked at the old world as like, oh, they're weak. They've been coddled by our protection throughout the years. So it's kind of a very interesting mechanic that we see playing out for you as the player. You are really going to be stacked up against a lot of adversity, and it's going to depend upon how you want to deal with that adversity. It results in how your campaign will play for Kislev. Our second to last character here is Mannfred von Carstein, and he has a very drastically different start, right? He used to start all the way in Sylvania, but now he doesn't. And that is going to be pretty wild, because now he's all the way down here. He's estranged from the lands that he was accustomed to. So this gives you direction, right? Do you try to get into Nagashazar and try and start up that whole kind of undead empire there until, of course, if they add Nagash, hopefully they do. Or do you push north slowly, climbing your way through everything to try to get your way into Sylvania again? That is going to be a pretty wild adventure for you. And even thus, then, with Sylvania, you've got Vlad and Isabella that can be whichever one's the legendary lord of that playthrough. I wonder if the AI will randomize it, or if it's always Vlad unless you're playing Isabella. I wonder how that's going to work out. But still, you've got so much opposition on your march north that I think that this character is going to be just in the same way Volkmar is, right? Like, Mannfred is surrounded by enemies, right? Like, all these people, no one likes him. No one likes him. Maybe he can get some action with Skarbrand. Arkhan will probably like him, but no one else is going to like him. So you are in a really tough spot. And again, maybe he might have some with Kairos here. So this gives you the opportunity to maybe expand and create an undead empire in the Southlands. But I think that a fun play for Mannfred von Carstein is leaving the Southlands and starting a undead empire in a different location. And I think that that's going to make this a very interesting playthrough, because there's so much opposition against him that you're going to have to struggle to carve out some form of kingdom from a land that is really beset on all sides. So I think that Mannfred von Carstein is probably going to be the most challenging of all of the new vampire count playthroughs until or if we get any more undead or vampire characters in the future, right? Like, again, like Nagash or anything of that sort. But it does, again, really make for a very, very challenging playthrough for Manny. All right, the last character to talk about, the Everchosen himself, Archaon the Everchosen himself, and how he can take advantage of this new Warriors of Chaos vassalizing system, and how that allows him to kind of have this humongous chaos empire to the west, to the southeast, to the south, even to the southeast, however direction you want to go. Of course, huge point of contention up front. This does obviously create an issue with the inability to do the kind of confederation thing that we've heard about with the Warriors of Chaos and everything, which kind of pisses me off, but it is neither here nor there. If it's for those who really want to do like the gotta catch them all to legendary lords, you know. But to kind of create this actual, like, you're much further out, right? Like, before you were just at the very tip of Norska, now you're actually in the Northern Chaos Wastes, and you have to make your way into the old world in a pretty poignant way. But you can spend a lot of time building your army, and what was always kind of seen as just like an event, like, oh, okay, well, it's turn 115 in the Immortal Empires campaign, and boom, now Archaon's big and bad and scary, he's spawned, he's gonna come rip through your lands. Now he actually has this ability to build and slowly crawl from this location south south, whatever you want to kind of do here, which I think makes for a very fun and different playthrough for Archaon. That is a little less, it's a little less in the face, right? Because Archaon before was kind of pitched into the fire very fast. And now with Kislev being a fleshed out faction with legendary lords, it makes more sense to have Archaon have a bit more of a ramp. And I think that this makes for a character that's going to be way more enjoyable, especially with all the new Warriors of Chaos mechanics here. I think Archaon is going to be one of the ones that everyone jumps to after they've tried the DLC character. I mean, let's be honest here. Who's not going to play the DLC characters first for Warriors of Chaos? That could be the poll question. Are you going to play the Warriors of Chaos DLC characters first? Or are you going to play a set Warriors of Chaos character? Are you going to jump into Kolek first? Or we'll say Be'lakor because he's not necessarily a DLC character. Or Archaon. Or Sigvald. Whatever it is. Let me know in the comment section below. This is pretty late in the video to have my poll question. Whatever the fuck. Who cares? So go ahead, guys, let me know what you're thinking about that. But I think that this kind of ultimately concludes our video in the discussion of where these locations can really have a lot of fun and impact for Immortal Empires. But as I said, that kind of brings our video here to a close. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below about some other starting locations that I maybe didn't really talk about a whole bunch. Do you think that Marathi's starting location makes it for a lot more fun for her, or the change up to the Beastmen and the slight kind of variation of their starting locations, it's really not that big of a change, is more interesting to you? Or maybe Helman Gorst and his ability to now start in the Noblar country makes for a whole different and crazy vampire counts playthrough. Let me know how you're feeling about these. Really, this video was just kind of aimed at talking about a lot of the excitement on the Immortal Empires map that I really want to jump into. A lot of places that aren't even really kind of focused on because maybe they aren't getting a huge mechanic overhaul or whatever it is. And I think that a lot of this stuff is going to become pretty goddamn crazy when we get future DLCs and campaign packs down the road. Chaos Dwarfs, of course, being the biggest one that is going to put, it's going to put faces on the map in the only location that is completely blank outside of Ind and Koresh, right? Which you can't even go to. Like the Darklands is the only location that is completely devoid for the most part, minus like 2-3 legendary lords. So the Chaos Dwarfs are going to completely turn this entire video's worth of knowledge upside down because they're really going to fill in that location. Same thing with Cathayan DLC characters wherever they might be on the map, especially taking a look at so much of Cathay, which is completely uninhabited. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.